who can tell me a little bit about the law of four? I think it's good to reheat, right? Because we reheated the law of four on the 7th from the one before that. And now we've had a lull. We missed a week there. Everyone needs a break sometimes, you know.
Yeah. So I'm taking you mine right now. So
how would you work into beginning to explain the law of four to someone who's never heard of it before? No pun intended.
Generally speaking, it's with the very common examples that they're going to be aware of right away. 4 seasons, 4 directions. Kind of an intro to it, and then from there, take it in a little further. You know, start to drill down at that point.
Yeah, that's an excellent place to start. But how do you get to 4 seasons?
That is.
Why aren't there 2? Why isn't there 1?
It's a good question.
The most fundamental place to start is the law of 2. Anytime the law of 2 intersects with an expression of itself, in other words, this way, intersects with the law of 2, an expression of itself going in a different direction, you get the law of 4. And as you'll see later, the law of 6 and the law of 8. So 2, 4, 6, 8. Who do we appreciate? Okay, so let's draw it out. It's just good to get this kind of warm up going, this process going, isn't it? Yeah. You start with a bar like this and you say hot and cold. Okay, now hot and cold are 2 aspects of the same thing. It forms a bar, and it's kind of relevant, isn't it? I mean, you can have the burner on your stove on, which would be freezing cold compared to the temperature of the sun, wouldn't it? You see how that is? All right, so they're not really opposites, they're a bar. It's a bar of expression given the context of something. Really, it's an indicator in this scenario, if you're talking about substances, it's an indicator of how much molecular movement is going on in something. I mean, I presume, right, if there's a absolute 0, there must be an absolute hot. I don't think something could.
You'd have thought so.
Absolute 0. Yeah, you would think so, right? There must be a point where past plasma, where it's no longer possible to get more. Oh, ask Sam someday. Yeah, we'll figure that one out.
Yeah.
All right. So hot and cold, dry and wet. All right. Hot, cold, dry, wet. These are 2 forces crossing each other, and they're a very good starting place to be able to explain how the law of 2 creates a result. Because if you got, you understand, without some other way to interpret it, hot and cold has no meaning in its own self. You can go to the infinite bars of absolute 0 and absolute hot, if there is such a thing. You can go to the infinite bars of dry, absolute dry, and absolute wet. Which really just has to do with the shear point of something.
Right.
Shear point?
The shear point, okay? You take a glass of water has basically no shear point. You pour it into a cup, okay? And you pour it into another cup, and you can put it into a cube or a square. It always just kind of conforms. But if you take a block of ice and you try and stuff it into a cup, there you go again. Camera. Follow me now?
Yeah, it is.
Is it following me? Yes, it is. Okay, yep. Well, whatever. But you take a block of ice and you try and, a cubic block, and you try and cram it into something triangular, it's going to have to break. Wherever it breaks, that's its shear point. See, water doesn't do that. So hot and cold are an expression of molecular movement in something. Wet and dry are the expression of its shear point, its ability to conform to something. Okay, now Ion, you started off talking about the 4 seasons. Hot and dry, summer. Right? Dry and cold, fall, autumn, wouldn't it be?
Oh, yes, 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 yes. Plenty help.
Hot and wet, spring.
Summer or spring, rather. Yes, 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 yes.
Yep. And dry and cold winter. That's how you get into the 4 seasons, by explaining when 2 aspects of the law of 2 intersect one another. All right. So then what did we talk about? We talked about I'm not going to use the wet one this time. We'll leave the hot, cold, wet, dry in place, but this time we'll put serpent and bull. Eagle. And lion. Wait, yes or no? See, that's the problem. There we go. Okay. Yeah?
Yeah.
What do those mean? What do those mean? You need to get to the point where you understand hot, cold, wet, dry is symbolic of something. Yeah? I mean, you can take this aspect and apply it to anything, can't you? Serpent, dry, cold nature. Now think about this in terms of an individual, right? If an individual has serpentine type of quality about them, they can have this sort of steely affect, can't they? Yeah. Dry and cold, right? You see, are you catching it? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, sort of that, emotionally dry, cold demeanor type of thing. Someone with a bull nature introduces the aspect of emotional fluidity, but still has a cold aspect to it. Think of Taurus, astrological sign. Right. Now, what do you mean by cold in this aspect? Is Taurus tends to be steady, as opposed to all over the place and rowdy and rambunctious and that type of stuff. They have this kind of steadiness about them. But unlike the serpent, they have a more fluid expression, don't they, of their emotional state. They might have this steadiness about them, but more of a fluid expression. Lion, hot, but still that fluid expression. Think of Leo, astrological sign Leo. So now let's go into some symbolical aspects of it. I'm just trying to get you on the frequency of the law of 4, because if you get on the frequency of it, then you'll begin to, well, first of all, notice it everywhere. You begin to have examples and references outside of bull, bird, lion, and serpent, and outside of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and outside of the 4 seasons and whatnot, because you have this tuning fork, this resonance. Serpent and bull, symbolically. Serpent being the like the cup, or sorry, the rod aspect of something, and the bull being the cup aspect. We talked about this last time, where the symbology of the bull looks just like the womb, doesn't it? If you draw a bull's head with the horns, got the whole kind of shape of the womb going on there. And the serpent, not only of the sperm, but also having a linear type of motion to it, like the penis. So you've got this aspect of the reproductive aspect of things, yeah. And so you can almost think of the bull and the serpent as the two strands of DNA that coil together. Yeah, provides your physical or the physical attributes. And now, what about the eagle and the lion? Can they join? This is the big mystery. First of all, what do the eagle and lion indicate?
Fire and air.
Huh?
Fire and air.
Well, yes, but I'm talking about from the human complex standpoint. You've got the aspects of the physical body.
Right.
One other way to put that actually would be your centers on one side and your physical body on the other, both being pentagrammic in nature. Talking about the serpent and the bull. And within that, some are serpent-like and some are bull-like. So anyway, we can get into octaves at another point in time. Today, we're mostly on about 2, 4, 6, 8 things. We already talked about 2, whether you realize it or not. But the soul and the spirit, having to do with the eagle and the lion. We talked about this change of order of things, didn't we? Where the order of, in an undeveloped person, the order is really physical body and emotions and brains and all those sorts of things has dominance or dominion or control over the aspects of the soul and spirit. When a person gets developed, those roles switch, where the soul and spirit, spirit first, then soul, has dominion over the physical aspects of things. In other words, well, this was really what was being hinted to by the work that was done many decades ago on things like values and standards. It was meant to get a person outside of the body and into having the spiritual aspect or soul aspect, being able to control what one does. So same thing, actually, it's the same thing that was talked about in the Bible with the idea of turn the other cheek. It's not like, someone comes up and slaps you upside the head that you just go, okay, thank you very much, please have a go at this side as well. It has to do with this concept of the higher controlling the lower. You understand? Because if someone were to go up and slap you in the face, you'd probably go, let's go, right? Because that's the physical aspect of it, right? That's where the body, the lower center, say, no, I'm not taking this anymore. I'm gonna fight you, whatever the case might be. And people, no matter how Christian, if I can use that word in quotation marks, no matter how Christian they might be, without that level of development, it's not going to become that. And even if it does, generally speaking, it's going to be because they were told to do it, not because it was natural and endemic to their level of development. That's a huge difference. Yeah? You can be ordered not to do something. I mean, here, perfect example, you get pulled over by the police. Yeah. Now, if you've got a temper, most people still, when they're pulled over by the police, speeding, whatever the case is, will have a modicum of self-control, won't they? They're not going to get belligerent with the police because what's going to end up is you're going to end up in jail. Yeah? But it's not because it's their level of development, it's out of fear of threat. And so generally speaking, in the context of turn the other cheek from the Christian standpoint, it's a rule or a fear of threat. You don't want to go to hell, right, for disobeying the rules of Christianity, as opposed to this is the natural expression when someone becomes more developed, that they don't think of retaliation with violence. It's accepted as part of reality and move on. This has to do with the control aspect of the spirit and soul having dominion over the physical body, the serpent and the bull. The bull being your 5 appendages, serpent representing your 5 centers. Those are all aspects of the lower. All right, you with me so far?
Yeah.
Okay. And this is demonstrated, and I'm not a great artist, so I'm just going to have you come to the mental picture in your mind. But if you studied any kind of heraldry or any kind of symbolism in ancient times, especially like in the Middle Ages and whatnot, you've got these symbols of the eagle grasping the serpent. Right? You've probably seen this. If not, just go through books on heraldry, and you'll see this symbol time and time again, where the eagle has the serpent in its talons. Similarly, the lion has the bull. Yeah, you'll see this all the time too, where the lion has this kind of hold on the bull beneath. The idea is that the eagle eventually devours the serpent, and the lion devours the bull. This has to do with the idea of having your higher spiritual aspects of oneself consume the personality in favor of essence. Tying all of these types of things in so that you can begin to see what the value of the law of 4 is. But hidden within it is also the law of 3. Okay, and it comes in like this. You've got one upward pointing triangle and one downward pointing triangle, having to do with the physical aspect. In other words, you condense from the unseen worlds into a physical form. And the upper triangle, you evaporate. I don't know. Opposite of condensation is evaporation, isn't it? But you have this kind of rising aspect in yourself of the soul and spiritual aspect. And in someone where the eagle has not captured the serpent and the lion has not captured the bull, you get this separation. You've got a unlinked triangle, right, where these two are still in their natural conditions. You've got a soul and spirit that really can't hear or access the aspects of the physical body. Undeveloped state, like in this diagram here, they're just kind of connected at the center because of the aspect of it. But when you begin a personal development journey and the eagle begins to devour the serpent and the lion begins to devour the bull, these two merge forces. Right? It's not only a domination or a dominance, I should say, but also a feeding. And so then you get this idea of this combination of the two, like that. The law of 6 aspect to it. I'm going to pause there. Just going to let you ponder that or ask questions or whatever the case you want to do is. Look, we've already covered a lot of ground, haven't we?
Right. Yes.
What does it bring up in you? What is it causing you?
Can you just go over the separation of the 2 triangles with the diamond?
Talking about this.
Yeah. What's
Yeah.
the difference between the two? No, not difference. What it is that, yeah, between
They're separated by
that
wet
state,
and dry. Okay,
yeah,
they're still in a condition where the hot and cold are balanced out and separated by the wet and dry. This is the downward triangle,
mhm,
this one, and of course the eagle lion is the upward triangle of this. It's a state of discontinuity. Really, in this state, you can't say I. You can't say I to something because I represents unity. You can say we, right? That's a first good step. I mean, I'm not encouraging, by the way, that you know, go off to work and, you know, begin like the we, you know, royal we we appreciate your service today, right?
yeah.
We are not
Wouldn't go down
amused.
well. Yeah,
Huh?
it wouldn't go down well.
No, it wouldn't. Yeah. Right. Because part of the aspect of this work is, um, except for what you radiate, which means that someone would have to have a tuning fork to your radiation. No one should really know what you're doing. No one should be able to detect the difference in you versus you know, someone else, except for what you radiate. Right? They need to have a sensitivity to what you radiate to be able to know that you have some content within you. But this separation, it's just like I've said before, no one is developed or no one is born already developed.
Yeah.
Even if one reincarnates, all it means is that they have a heretic propensity towards things, towards ways and means. That's it. They're not born developed. No one has ever been born developed. They might have some tuning forks, but again, you actually have to work them, don't you? Yeah. Move into those things. I mean, if you're born with a sense of clairvoyance or the ability to see electrically, it means you got there in a previous time. Yeah. But you still need to work it because you're not going to understand meaning first and foremost because most people can't. And so here, I'll put it like this. You're born with vision. You're born with the ability to see things. But without your parents saying tree, car, squirrel, you know, actually identifying these things for you over and over and over again, if you didn't grow up with that, you would have no way to make meaning out of it.
Yeah,
You really wouldn't. Right? This is the whole kind of power of language in there. So people are born here like this. And I only separated this because just to visually make it a bit easier to see the
Right.
difference between the two. It's
Right,
not like
right.
they're completely disconnected. Otherwise, you
Yeah.
wouldn't be a human. I mean,
Mm.
you just wouldn't have those aspects to yourself, and you'd be leading two lives, wouldn't you? Does
yeah,
that help?
it does.
Yeah. All right. Let's move into 8 then for a little bit. Does that sound good? So you've
Before,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, before we move on to 8, this thing about the lion and the bull, the lion grasping the bull,
Yeah.
and the serpent, sorry, the eagle devouring the serpent.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to understand that. Is it that when the lion devours the bull, is it that to develop you've got to get rid of your earthly stuff?
Interesting.
I'm just trying to figure out what it is that you're saying with, you know, the lion devouring the bull. Is it because the bull with the earth, air, fire, water would be the earth, and
So
also with the eagle devouring the serpent, with the serpent being water.
air
I'm just trying
devouring
to
water,
understand.
fire devouring earth. You'll
Yeah.
notice that they don't do that, do they?
No, they don't.
When it comes down to air, earth, water, and fire, which is another aspect of the law of four, you can unlock different mysteries. But to answer your question very succinctly, no, it's not an elimination, it's an integration. The symbol of eating something, I mean, what? You know, you have this expression, you are what you eat. It's not you eliminate what you've eaten. I'm not talking about the digestive process, but it becomes kind of part of your ecology of self. Okay, so it's the integration of the eagle and the serpent and the integration of the lion and the bull. Yeah. And these things, instead of being separate, they merge together and you become a different.
Amalgamation.
Huh?
Amalgamation.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, like an amalgamation. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, it happens in nature anyway. Really curious thing. If you set a gold bar next to a silver bar and come back in about 20 years, they'll both have this gold silver nature because they exchanged just by the sheer aspect of being in contact with one another. They will have exchanged kind of half of their resources to the other. That's the idea here. Now, you know, you get this idea too of planetary existence, because if the eagle really did devour the serpent and the lion did devour the bull, you wouldn't be able to have a carnal existence here, would you? Get these stories of people spontaneously combusting. It's because they begin a particular practice that they weren't ready for, make a sun level connection, and can't store it in the body. It's not ready for it. It's the same thing with having an ecology. Sometimes you enter into an ecology that has so much force behind it that it anesthetizes the lower centers. Some people have been in meetings like this, especially in a very strong force content aspect where they can't eat for days. This is why in the early days, take a break about halfway through, hit the T-bar, have a couple crackers, some biscuits or whatever the case might be, reconnect the lower aspects so that they can then continue on. Otherwise, you get more of a separation, really. And also, in the East, in many cultures in the East, they kind of value this idea of the guru or the saint or the Brahma or the holy man or whatever, that's so spiritualized that he or she is completely out of touch with the physical realms. You get this kind of thing, like just they're in nirvana, satori. They're in the spiritual realms. That's where they exist. I don't think that's actually good for a person's development. I think what that does is actually just move these two triangles further away from each other. I mean, hopefully you are grateful for the fact of your existence. Hopefully. So that's what makes this kind of a different way. So Hannah, to get back to your question, it's like we say, it's an integration of self rather than a consumption of self. Yeah. All right. So now, curiously enough, we'll if you go back through the videos, I think it was a year or two, I can probably try and find it, but we did a whole series on 1 through 9. I think we had 9 lessons. Lesson 1 was about the number 1. Lesson 2 was about 2. I've given you so many references as starter points that you can go off and literally spend months to years of just investigating each of these numbers. We're not going to do that so much today, although we will make room for it at some point in time. Okay, we'll rehash that at some point in time. But tell me what's in you about the law of 6. What do you know? What do you know about the law of 6? The house of 6 is going to demonstrate itself in nature. So I would start there. I would start looking at places where the 6-sided shape appears in nature, because it does. as well as the, you know what I mean, right? Where you get, usually it's an inversion of itself. Yeah, that's the shape that you get in nature, generally speaking. You don't generally get the up and down triangle. Okay, it's because it's a container for the house of 6. But it's okay. All right, we'll go through those types of things. At this point in time, just understand that 6 is something joining. 6 is something coming together. Kind of like the law of 4 and kind of like the law of 2. I should show this, shouldn't I? By the way, I'm not necessarily here to answer questions. I'm here to give you more questions. Okay, so I'll do my best to get you started down certain pathways that's going to open up a lot of territory for you. But I'm not the Hierophant. Okay, I'm not here to instruct. I'm here to drive you crazy with more questions. All right. So we've got the law of 2, don't we? Hot and cold.
Right?
Can't do anything by itself because you can't ever get the ends to meet. You can't make hot touch cold, can you? Can't make wet touch dry. So the first expression that we can at least determine in the law of 2 has to do with when it intersects itself. Now, who can tell me what that sign is there?
It's a plus sign or addition sign.
There you go, addition sign. Yeah. And so it works through which principle? Aggregation or confirmation? Remember those terms from another meeting? Yeah. I'll give it to you if you want. It's aggregation. It's aggregation. Okay. And what it means is that something is added to itself. Something, if you have, if you're counting jelly beans and you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it works very linearly. You're aggregating jelly beans. If you're confirming jelly beans, let's say that you have 5 jelly beans and you want to understand the nature of what 5 jelly beans means, you double it up and let one look at the other. That's confirmation. All right. This is how this. Here's another way to look at it. You have a point. A point is representative of one, unity. In order for the point to understand itself, it has to project itself outward in a series of ones, in a series of points, so that each one can look at each other. So you get the line, right? Which is nothing more than a series of points. Right? And for a line to understand itself, it has to become a surface. Right? And so it works like this. And eventually surfaces become 3-dimensional objects. 3-dimensional objects begin to experience time, which is another aspect. It's a growth of the 3-dimensional objects. In other words, from a solar standpoint, if you have this kind of solar view of things, you would see your life as something like half of a sine wave. Birth, death, all of it is you, just like the sun sees itself as a rod through time. It doesn't have a concept of yesterday, tomorrow, that sort of thing. Just like your physical body is an extension of the plane, planetary. All right. So yes, you get the plus sign. And then once the law of 2 meets itself, it then, then you've got the higher and lower aspects of it, those aspects of the triangle. So that's the law of 6. Law of 8 is also a resultant force where you get the 4 seasons for the, bull, bird, lion, serpent, or any of these other expressions of the law of 4 that we've been talking about. And so now the house of 2 makes the house of 4, which makes the house of 6 and 8. 2, 4, 6, 8. They're all even numbers, aren't they? And they're all aspects aspects of growth, but in different ways. Okay, the multiplication sign is that confirmation. 2 times 2 equals 4. Actually, 2 plus 2 also equals 4. So let's say, right, I mean, 4, you understand what I'm saying though, right? You're getting this kind of doubling aspect of things. And so this is why we have in the symbolic aspects of the way, we've got what are called the physical cross and the solar cross.
Right.
And you as a human actually demonstrate both of those, don't you? You've got, if you stand like this, you're a physical cross. If you stand like this, you're a solar cross. You've got both aspects to yourself. This aggregation confirmation sort of thing. I'm going to pause for a second because we're going really fast through a lot of concepts that we could literally spend an entire hour and a half on individually. So now's the time to ask some questions if you need to. They're all about mixing though. Mixing and marrying. 2, 4, 6, 8. Pythagoras called them female numbers, odd numbers being male numbers. We can get into that. It has to do with the tetraxis. It's such a hard word to say. 1 dot, 2 dots below it, 3 dots below that,
Yes.
4 dots below that. Okay.
Yes.
Equals up to 10. 1, 2, 3, and 4 equals up to 10. 10 dots, that is. Okay. But you can make squares out of even numbers and triangles out of odd numbers. And when all right, so let's talk about 8 for a little bit because there's a couple of aspects to this, aren't there? How do we draw the number 8? Draw it like that. If you lay it on its side, you get the number for infinity. What do 8 and infinity have to do with each other? Ooh, the ponders. Again, not so much here to teach as I am to get your brains working on mysteries, the mysteries of the universe.
Yes. Yes.
Someone figured it out. Pythagoreans mostly. That was their shtick. Numbers primarily.
Yeah.
It's very important to study root numbers from the standpoint of their natural expression. You can go out and learn a bunch about the number 8 also by seeing where it occurs in nature. It's fatal to the human, generally speaking. You'll find that. Fatal or dangerous to the human. But one of the aspects of infinity is actually, it's probably a misnomer. It's not that it's, how do I put this? Okay. Let's say you decide to go on a journey and let's pretend that the planet actually has its continents all connected, right? Maybe you're walking on Mars or something like that where there aren't oceans, right? You don't have to swim across. But if you head out in a particular direction and see how long it takes you to get to the end, it would take you an infinite amount of time because you'll just keep passing the point that you started from, right? But there's a finite aspect when you talk about start and end and being the same aspect. You understand? Right? So you can walk forever, infinite amount of time, and there's also a finite aspect where you keep returning to the beginning. So now through the idea of this, you can begin to understand things like reincarnation, where you can be born April 3rd, 1972. I'm not going to say what my death date is, right? But you can die then And you can come right back to April 3rd, 1972. This is not actually reincarnation, it's called recurrence. It's what most people do. It's just like walking around the planet, isn't it? Stuck in this loop, the Buddhists say, to try to break the cycle of existence, don't they? They were on to it. They were on about 8, actually, the Buddhists. They have what do they, I don't recall what they call it, but they have like the 8 right ways of living, roughly speaking, don't they?
Right.
They're, yeah.
Eightfold paths?
Huh?
Eightfold paths? Or is that something different? The eightfold path?
April pounds? I don't understand the word.
Eightfold?
Eightfold path, yes.
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 Yeah. All right. So if you want to understand 8, you can also look at the core of Buddhism, not necessarily the dogma of it.
Hmm.
Core came from there. Now, 8 also has to do with the superposition of the physical cross, aggregation, and confirmation. It's the superposition of those 2 aspects.
Hmm.
Do you guys know how to do root numbering? Finding the root number of something, like alphabetically.
Yes.
Yeah. The essence of it, for those who will eventually be watching the video, is well, I need a new box of chalk. A is 1, B is 2, and you keep going all the way up through 9, right? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. I is 9. And then J is 1. Yeah. And then S is 1. Okay, so this is how you determine the root number in something. Okay, and so if you want to, Earth, that's A, R, T, H. So you've got 5, 1, 9, 2, 8, and you add all of those up together, and you get, let's see, I'm sorry, it's a 7, isn't it? So crossed out 9, crossed out 1 and 8, 5 and 2 equals 7. Quick kind of shortcut. Anytime you have a 9 in the mix there, it's just going to continue to hold all of it, because that's the nature of 9. It's encompassing. It's going to hold on to whatever is stored within it.
Yeah.
I would encourage you, if it's been a long time, to begin to go through and figure out the root numbers of things. Just keep your minds active with the root number of things. You'll discover quite a bit about language. You really will. Mark.
Yeah.
How do you spell organized?
You talking about
The word organized. How do you spell,
Yeah.
or anyone in the UK there, spell the word organized for me.
O-R. Come on.
G-A.
Yeah.
N-I-S-E.
N-I-S-E. Right?
Yeah.
Organized. That's how you spell organized, don't you?
Yeah, that's the correct way. Yeah. Yeah.
Right, that's the correct way, isn't it? Ion, how do we spell organized?
O-R-G-I. Oh, geez.
It's all right. O-R-G-A-N-I-Z-E-D-Z. Yeah?
Yeah.
We changed the S into a Z.
Because that's the correct way.
No.
Right.
Americans can't even say Z right. They say Z. Yeah.
Okay. Now, what does this tell you about language? Because organized in the British sense, in the British spelling, comes out to 2, and for the American side of the house, it comes out to 9. Because of the change of one letter, S to Z. And we don't talk funny like you either, do we?
No, you talk funny like you do.
we've changed it. The word still means the same thing.
Mhm.
The word still means the same thing, kind of. I would be willing to bet that if you, Mark and Hannah, started to tell me what the word organized mean, that there would be a difference actually between what Ion thinks organized is. Just like there's a difference between our accents from one culture to the other, even though we're speaking the same language.
Yeah.
There's going to be subtle meaning differences. There's going to be changes. Now, what do I mean by this? This is where you can begin to watch the trace of evolution of language. Take the word orange, for example. All right. Do you know where the word orange comes from? It's like
Not original, no.
it's a Greek word. In Greek, they have their own system of determining the root numbers of things, going through and assigning each letter a value. And it comes out as different than the English version. Both cultures, English or British and American, spell orange the same way, but in Greece, it had a different root number. And so you can watch the progression throughout history of words that have their origins in things like Latin and things like Greek. Hebrew is a great example of that too. Each of the letters in the Hebrew alphabet also have a particular value with it. This is why when you look at their scriptures, you can get really deep into the numerological aspect of things and unlock certain clues as to that, because each letter is a number. Therefore, each word is a composite of letters or a composite of numbers and also has its root number. It's a fascinating trace. If you go back to the origin of things, you can see how it got into our language. I mean, I would hazard to say that English actually has very few words that are its own. Even something like computer, I would be willing to speculate that the word compute comes from something. Sounds Latin to me actually, but I don't know for sure. Right? So you can trace the origin of history, or the history of words.
Mm.
Yeah. And what the cultural differences are between two cultures separated by a common language. I'll say that again. Two cultures separated by a common language. Yeah. Oh. If you haven't picked it up yet, today's a bit about groundwork.
Yes.
That's why it's questions instead of answers. Yeah, I want to trigger in you, or reignite in you, since all of you are prior Eminent members. I want to reignite in you your love and passion for groundwork. Typically, groundwork has to do with color, number, symbol, and Mark, the fourth one.
Struggling. No, stuck.
Sigil. Color, number, symbol, and sigil.
Of course it is, yeah.
Okay, so answer a question for me. I almost got it all wet again. What's that?
Number 3.
Y'all agree?
Yeah.
Y'all agree?
I'm glad you said that because I was about to say 8:30.
Hey. Oh, that's a
Don't
good
ask
way
me
to look at
why.
it.
Don't ask
Brilliant.
what. That was the
Brilliant
first thing
groundwork.
that came to mind was 8:30.
Yeah, curiously, right? 4.
Yeah, I know. This is the problem. Yeah.
Yeah. We write 4 either like this or like this, depending on how you were trained. But regardless of that, in the original one, you get the law of 4 plus sign in there, don't you? Yeah. Just with 1/4 of it quartered out, because it's always the way it is, isn't it? Lion can see hot and wet, this type of stuff, but lion can't see serpent, for example. completely at the opposite end of the bar. Okay, but you told me that this is the number 3, is that right?
Yes.
Everyone agree?
Yep.
Nope. It's the sigil for 3. A sigil is a representation of something.
Hmm.
If I have 3 pieces of chalk, holding in my hand 3 pieces of chalk, that is the essence of 3-ness. It can never be confused with 4-ness or 6-ness or 1-ness. Right? It's the essence of 3-ness. It's a sigil, not a not a number. Color, number, symbol, sigil. Why is it not a symbol?
Is it to do with the potency of what that can do? Like
Kind of.
when you, with a sigil, when you draw it out, it's much more connective than a symbol.
I guess it would depend on how you're using the word connective, because a symbol is going to have a natural representation of the thing that it symbolizes.
Right.
Okay. A rod, for example, is a direct symbol of the nature of transmissiveness. A cup is a direct symbol of the nature of receptiveness. And you can even see this in electronics, can't you, right? Where a transmitter is going to be a rod-like antenna, and like a satellite receiver is going to be a cup-like thing. And because that's the way that it works the best. Electrons tend to flow off of a point. If you have a pointy thing, like a needle or a nail or whatever the case is, and you have it charged with a certain type of electricity, the place you're going to get zapped is right at the point, okay? Because that's what transmits. If you hold your hand near the cylindrical portions of it, I mean, if you touch it, it's still going to try and flow into you, but it won't do so as easily as it does at the point.
Yeah.
You know, like half parabolic or complete parabolic receivers are there to collect things in as they do that. So you can push that. Those are symbols. 4, the number 4 is both a sigil and a symbol. I'll let you work that one out. Okay.
Yeah.
Mostly a
Came
sigil.
to mind is why.
Mostly
Why?
a sigil.
Yeah.
Don't forget that nature tends to encapsulate things. Okay. So we look at the core of something, plus sign. Nature usually presents itself like that, and you get several elements, if you will, that demonstrate the number 4, but in an encapsulated form. Nature usually hints at it. It keeps the core of it hidden into itself. All right. So now you know the difference between symbol and sigil, and it's important to know those things. We've touched on the idea of number. I'd like you to try and practice this throughout the week. Anytime you have a spare moment, then begin to collect examples of the root numbers of things. Because if you get enough examples in your head, you're going to start to see that something that belongs to the house of 4 and another thing that roots to the house of 4 has a certain kind of correlation with itself. They're connected usually somehow. In other words, they have a tuning fork to
A tuning fork to each other or to the
both.
Yeah.
Both.
Yeah.
Both the tuning fork to the house of 4 and a tuning fork to each other.
Yeah. Of course, yeah. Even
Even down to the point of odd or even. tends to have tuning forks. You'll have more fights if your birthday root number, you know how to do this, like, right? 4/3/1972. 4 plus 3 plus 1, 9, 7, 2 equals 8. All right, I'm an 8. Take your own birthday, figure out what you are.
Yeah.
You'll find it's not exactly a repellent, but you'll have more disagreement with someone who is an even number. If your root number is even, you're going to disagree with me, and I'm going to disagree with you more than if it's odd, because there's a kind of an attraction there, isn't there? Right? Mhm. And then see the side eye. And then you can
Trying
figure
to
out.
work out how an interaction between a 2 and a 9 is a result of personality or design.
Well, you're going to act like a pendulum together. Because 2 plus 9 is 11, 1 plus 1 is 2. So
Yeah,
she
so
wins every
2 to
time.
1 whole, yeah.
Hannah's going to win every time.
I wish I did that.
Don't forget my saying, yeah? Yeah, right. I'm always right except for when I'm wrong, and that can be quite often or not often depending on my frame of mind.
Yeah, and you're just going to hold it all, aren't you? Right? Because 9 is the house that holds.
Yeah. Got the collection of all the good and bad of both 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Plus
And
Aquarius.
that's why there's not a 10. A 10 would be a fully developed person. They would root to 10. This has to do with the 13th sign and the 13th disciple, as opposed to the 12 disciples, 12 apostles, whichever language you like. Let's introduce one more groundworking tool. Anagrams. Now, wait. Yeah, we'll go into anagrams. So please practice during the week. Okay? Do try and practice. Just pick a word. Doesn't matter what. And find its root number. Get adept at it. Get quick at it. Your moving center will love picking up the habit of it. Just as an aside, put things intentionally in your moving center. Can you juggle? Put things intentionally. Intentionally put things that you want to go into repetition into your moving center.
I told you. Didn't I? Yeah.
This has to do with tests and devotions, repetitions, all of these types of things.
Yeah.
But as opposed to snacking on potato chips every night, right? I'm not saying you do, but put something in your moving center that you would rather have there.
Exactly.
Get a word. Just pick one out at random. A good way to do that is start to text somebody and see what the what the phone thinks you're trying to say. Yeah, take that word. The predictive text is the bane of my existence.
Oh, yeah.
Take that word and anagram it, or not anagram, but find the root number as quickly as possible. Eventually, you're going to get enough of a storehouse where for many words that you encounter, you'll just automatically, oh, that's a 2, that's a 9, that's a 4, that's a 7, type of word. It's a great thing to have in your moving center. It really is. All right. Anagrams. For a long time, I thought anagrams were bullshit. I really did. But take the idea, if you will, that each letter carries its own frequency with it. Oh, we've been through this, haven't we? Right? Like
yes.
Apis bull for alpha, which became our A. You know what I'm talking about, right? This was the ancient symbol for A. It came from Egypt originally, where they drew it like this. Bull. Oops,
Hmm.
can't see it because I'm in the way.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
good.
they drew it like a bull, and then the Phoenicians got a hold of it and drew it like this because it's simpler and easier to do, especially if you're like, yeah, chiseling letters in as opposed to carving them in. And I don't know why it got flipped around at some point in time, but you know, in both the Latin alphabet and our alphabet, we write it that way. We've lost a lot of the essence of it, but it originally had a frequency. And if you want to take the letter A and come to the alpha Curiobet, if you've heard of that, the alpha Curiobet, the letter A having to do with something ancient, you know, something of origin, original value, ancient. In Egypt, the Apis bull not only represented the letter A, but the Apis bull was also the first born of creation, from which all the rest came. You see, so you get the frequency of it. If we actually still used hieroglyphs today, you could not only read them phonetically, but also read them symbolically. Each of the hieroglyphs, you could read them symbolically or phonetically. Yeah? Ka and the Ba being really strong examples of it. Egyptian pharaohs' names that are in the, actually, I'm going to retract that word pharaoh because there was never such thing as a pharaoh. Egyptian kings' names in the cartouche had both a phonetic meaning, yeah, Tutankhamun, for example, as well as a energetic, symbolical meaning based on what was in there. Okay. So the core of anagramming really, and alpha curio, that by the way, really comes down to what frequencies something has. But there's a caveat or a catch. Henna, if I have, or either anybody, if I have eggs, milk, salt, water, sugar, flour, what can I make?
Cake.
Sure, cake. What else can I make?
You can do
Pancake.
crepes.
Cake.
Yeah,
Crepes?
pancake crepes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What else can I make? You see, what you'll start to see is that even though I started with 6 ingredients, I think it was, maybe 7, doesn't matter, but I start with those ingredients and I can make various different things out of them, also depending on the quantity of it.
Right.
The quantity of it is going to often decide what the outcome is. If I have just a dash of sugar and a lot of salt, I'm going to end up making a cracker. Cracker. Yeah. Not a cake. You see, so it has to do with what's powering what and how much of something is in it. And that's part that's kind of left out of our language. Except for from a, wouldn't even be symbolic, except for a what powers what kind of standpoint. I'll give you an anagram. Anagram just means switching the letters around. All right, I've got the 6 ingredients to make a cake or a cracker. Depends on how I put them together. Right, so you got something like earth, for example. Anagrams to heart. Now, the consonants are the nature of something. The vowels are the power behind something. Think of a word in your head. Let's just use this. And then take out the I and try to pronounce the word. You can't do it. No one would understand you. You understand? I'm saying take out the I and try and pronounce the word this, or try and convey the message to it. It has no power behind it. You can't project it.
Yeah, yeah.
So the vowels project something. The vowels enliven the consonants. So if you look at the difference between earth you've got E standing by itself. Get into why that is. You've got A powering R, and then actually RTH. So A is really the major aspect of this. In this, you've got H standing alone, E powering A powering R, or RT, I should say. And that's the nature of heart. I'm not going to solve it for you, but understand what I'm getting at is that the reason why there's a difference conceptually between earth and heart has to do with what's powering what.
When you said for earth, the E stands by itself, and heart H stands by itself. Why do you describe it in that way?
Well, specifically in this case, it's because of the connection, this kind of connection. One that we don't have anymore. It's that particular
the
word.
A and the E stuck together,
Yeah. But in the example of making a cake, not everything mixes with everything. For example, salt isn't going to mix with flour, but it will mix with water. Okay. And so sometimes things stand on their own, like flour would be the binding agent, as would egg, but sometimes things stand on their own, and sometimes they mix with one another. Sometimes one thing powers another thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a hint into it, okay? Can't confirm this, but they said that astronauts had to have pacemakers or some way to continue, to keep their heart beating once they left the atmosphere of the Earth. I don't know if it's true. I haven't looked it up, but I can see that if it is true, that there is kind of a correlation between heart and Earth, although there's many other better ones, but it's a curious one. Can you see what word I have up here?
No, it's a bit small.
It's production. Reproduction. Re always means a repetition. Okay, so in this example, it's a repetition of production. Reproduction. Yeah. And you get certain combinations of letters like this that you can actually separate out when you're anagramming something. All right.
Yeah.
So if you anagram this around, you get a repetition. I'll just put it in parentheses here. Oh, a terrible parenthesis. Of rod into cup.
Really?
Cross the letters out if you don't trust me, but it's true, yeah? Rod into cup. A repetition of rod into cup is reproduction. Well, yeah, right. And if you get rid of that, then it's just production. Now tell me there's not some correlation there. I mean, it could actually very well be random. Eventually, you do something enough times and it's going to end up looking the way that you want it to. But once you begin to anagram words, just like figuring out their root numbers or which house they belong to, anagramming words is another brilliant tool to be able to see the flavors and frequencies that are surrounding a word. You can also do it going back to things like Greek and Latin. But you're going to have to speak Greek and Latin. Unlike doing root numbers on Greek and Latin, you'll have to actually speak Greek and Latin to see how those anagrams work. Now, you might have been told that English is the only language that anagrams work. It's nonsense. It's not true. It's not. Okay. I mean, take Hebrew, for example. All of the Semitic languages have a root which is 3 letters long. You know what I'm saying? Mark, you understand that, don't you?
A little bit.
Yeah. All the Semitic, Arabic, Hebrew, all of these Semitic languages, for the most part, are construct words out of 3 of their consonants, because originally the vowels were implied. Now they put marks around them to say, but usually there's 3 consonants that come into something. And so imagine you switch a couple of them around, you come up with a different word. You can still do root
Right.
words in Semitic languages. Okay, you
Yeah.
can still anagram Semitic languages. Whoever had the concept that English is the only language that you could do anagrams in, just didn't do their research. Okay. Yeah. Take it from a polyglot. You can't. All right.
Polyglot down with it. That's it. Yeah.
Right. Find the root word and find anagrams for it. Now, a couple of rules about anagrams. If the word has to do with something that is future bound, you won't find a complete anagram in it. What I mean is, if you mix all the letters around in every which way possible, and you have junk left over at the end, XNP, something or another XNP, for example, it's a future bound letter or a future bound word. This gets into the idea of future permissions that are coming into the planet. Right? It doesn't have a full fixed meaning yet, but it will someday, depending on what else gets married to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're gonna upgrade your groundwork abilities. Okay. I said I'd do an Eamon with you, but not only does it require a good solid baseline, but even the tools that you use need to be upgraded for 2024, not 1977 or 72, whatever it is. Fair? Good?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, be honest. Do you do groundwork all the time?
All the time, no.
Often?
Often.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Good for you. Well, that means something stuck. Did this give you anything in addition to begin to work into?
Yes. Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
Yes.
If it's become rote in you,
Yeah.
tarot rote in you, then I would reinvigorate your passion for it.
Yeah.
Right? Put it in your moving center intentionally.
Yeah.
Okay. So color, we haven't touched on. Number, we scratched the surface of. Symbol, we scratched the surface of. Sigil, we brushed by. So just a little bit, but there's a lot more work to do. I'm pleased that I believe you understand the difference between symbol and sigil. Yeah, a sigil is a non-local or maybe an electrical representation of something that could be symbolic, like the number 3 is a sigil for the notion of threeness. You all know this one. Don't panic, it's okay. Yes. Symbol or sigil?
Sigil.
Would everyone agree?
Yes.
Yeah. What does it do? I can tell you what it does based on what you are all looking like at the moment. You need an immunity to that symbol. Sigil, sorry. I'm in the way of it. What does it do? Tap into your own complex for a moment, because that's the only place you're going to ever understand a sigil. When you look at a sigil, here's the difference. When you look at a symbol, you look towards nature. When you look at did I say symbol? Symbol, you look towards nature. When you look towards a sigil, you look towards yourself. You see what it causes inside of you.
Mm.
That's the only way to get into what a sigil is, what it does. So go inward for a moment. Tell me what your sense impressions are, your internal sensory impressions are, talking about like the 5 centers, the emotional, the thinking, the moving, the instinctive, emotional, and sexual centers. Which one's active? One way you can do this, actually, another aspect of detection, which is an enhanced version of groundwork, is take your hand over it and feel which fingers are triggered. Red and green. In this instance, red and green. Leaving out yellow and blue. And white. Yeah, white, blue, and yellow. Now think, okay. I'm going to give you more than I intended to if you're all right with that. So when you do this kind of detection, what you're looking for is what it can't hold, not what it, I'm sorry, what you're looking for is what it can hold, not what it doesn't hold. Take a green plant, for example. It means that it is holding everything but green. It can't hold the green, so it kicks it off. You see, white light comes in, which is red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, comes into that leaf, and it spits out the green. So in other words, internally, it's processing red, orange, yellow, blue, indigo, and violet without the green. It holds those ones. So when you do a detection like this, and you discover that your index finger and your pinky, red and green, get the sensation of it, then you know it's holding onto white, blue, and yellow.
What about if it's got a circle around it?
Well, that's going to enclose it.
Mm.
It's going to keep it from having effect on you.
Oh, blimey, right. But when you say an effect on you, are you talking about the ability to use it as opposed to it then using you, drawing from you?
Absolutely yes, to both answers. Okay, now how does this sit with you?
It feels very much more that it's drawing from us.
It's drawing from you with a circle around it?
Mm.
I don't get that. I don't
Okay.
feel that.
It feels nicer with a circle around it than the other way for me.
For me, it depowers it.
Yeah.
It takes away the power of it. And I'll I'll give you a bit of anecdotal evidence of that. When I first drew the Z-bar symbol up there, which is a modification of the symbol of Jupiter, and asked you how it impacted you, everyone went silent and still. Couldn't speak.
Yeah.
Didn't know what to say. Not at all. Couldn't even access that internal aspect of yourself, or maybe you got so lost in the internal aspect that you could not then externalize it. As soon as I put a circle around it, asked you the same question, everyone's got, no, I feel this way, and I feel that way, and I feel this way, about it.
Interesting.
Why wasn't only me? Yeah.
No, even you.
Yeah.
Even you.
Yeah.
You made the commission that you felt more drawn into it, but you were able to.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
When we didn't have a circle around it, it felt quite uncomfortable.
Yeah. Right.
Right there.
Imagine that.
Hang on, you can't see. Where's the camera? Hang on, hold up.
I saw you.
Did you? Right, so
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
there. in
Yeah,
solar
sure.
plexus. It felt really, really vulnerable.
What that symbol does without the circle around it is
Hmm.
it powers what is known as the silver vortex.
Yeah.
Now think of the word vortex for a moment. What does a vortex do?
Draws in. Hmm.
Yeah, sucks everything in. It's like the black hole. The silver
Yeah.
vortex sucks in silver.
Hmm.
The reason with that, without that having a circle around it, that you were more able to access yourself is because if you lose your silver, you go gold. You look at that Z bar symbol and it sucks all your silver out and you go gold.
Ooh.
Solid, frozen, unable to do, well, of a certain kind anyway.
Yeah.
That stored that power in the silver vortex, which is somewhere in our universe.
Yeah.
So it could then later be drawn from. Now, I don't have a problem with it as long as you're okay with it. I do have a problem with using things like sigils when a person is not aware or does not give permission to be used in that way. When we went through the alchemy commission, the alchemy commission having to do with each of the planets, there were a lot of sigils up there. But I have enough value and standard in myself to be able to use sigils responsibly, explain what they're doing, and then it's up to you, isn't it? Well, it's up to you to decide if you're going to partake in that. If you encountered this sigil and didn't give permission for what it would do to you, I stand against that. I'm sorry that that happened to you.
Mm.
You can't apologize too much because I didn't do it.
Yeah.
It's regretful. It goes against my standard anyway.
Yeah.
All right. Good.
Yeah.
Let's wrap it up. How does this leave you?
Can you move to one side, please? Thank you.
That's red, by the way. The X that I put on it. Camera just tends to show more contrast than color.
Yeah.
Actually look a lot more like George Clooney in real light.
You said that ages ago, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah.
You said that ages ago, did you? What?
I
I've actually been told that, but mostly by old
I
ladies.
remember. Oh, blimey. Oh.
I've been told that several times in my life, but all invariably by old ladies. You look just like George Clooney. You know, their eyes are failing, but it's all right. Cameras. Is everyone settled?
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting that the settlements come by the putting that red cross and then a bit of humour.
Yeah. Solar cross. Red solar cross on top of it.
Yeah. And that and the humour to break it up a bit. Yeah.
It's-
Yeah.
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 Why does humor do that? Why does humor break things up? What is humor? Do you understand? Do you even know what humor is?
Okay. A contradiction.
That's exactly right. Yeah. If we had tails, we would never laugh.
Yeah.
Our tail moved to our moving center. If you
Yeah.
irritate a cat, you know, I mean, it doesn't take much to irritate a cat, but if you irritate a cat, pet it backwards or something like that, you'll see tail starts to flick. Yeah. And then the ears go back and you better run. When the ears go back, you should get out of there. But
Yeah.
you see,
Yeah.
a cat disperses what it can't handle through its tail in a negative way. If you pet a cat, right? Their tail tends to go still until you hold it. Very interesting thing. If you hold a cat, I'm not saying hold a cat upside down by its tail, but like if it's laying down, if you hold the tail still, just put your hand on it, hold the tail still for 5 seconds, remove your hand and watch it go, and then it settles down again. Yeah, they do that. Now, so cats wag their tails when they get pissed off because they have a C in their name, right? Emotional content. Dogs do the opposite. When they're scared or whatever, they tuck tail, don't they? Their tail goes mortified. They tuck it between their legs. And when they're excited and happy, that's when their tail goes. Cats and dogs are different in that regard.
Yes.
But yeah, what it does is it dispels contradiction, like Ion said. Right? Most jokes go down a certain line and they set you up mentally and they set up your centers to think one thing is going to come of it. And then at the last second, it takes a 90-degree turn and gives you something else. Now, the contradiction happens in the forecasting aspect of the brain life, right? It says, okay, I see where this is going. A rabbi and a Christian walk into a bar. Yeah, I got that, right? I've got the mental image of it, that sort of thing. And then it takes a sudden turn and the brain has to go, halt, didn't see it coming. Don't know what to do with the energy I just built up about it. Time to get rid of it. And you go, ha, 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 right? And you disperse it.
Yeah.
What's the opposite? Am I keeping you? Because we're at 11:30 now, my time. Are we okay?
I'm fine, yeah. Yeah.
Suddenly got inspired to go a little bit longer, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
The opposite of laughter?
Sadness. Crying.
Almost.
Despair.
Crying is the dispersion in one center only.
Okay.
It uses saline, conductive saline. Pull something out. Yawning is the opposite of laughter. Laughter is when you have too much force, right? Something built up in you and you have to throw it out through the moving center. Yeah. And it's contagious in the same way that yawns are. But the reason why is because yawning is drawing in to your accumulators, drawing in force, right? After you yawn, you don't feel as tired. It's only right before the yawn. You go, right? And then you pull in some force and then you're not as tired. The problem is that the person next to you or in the same room as you is now more tired because you sucked the energy out of them, brought it into yourself, and then they yawn to get it back. This is why yawns are contagious, see? And they might get a little bit of it back from you, and they might get a little bit of it from some other person in the room, and then that other person, yeah, and you're just exchanging energy back and forth, all trying to balance out the accumulators to a general level. Okay, here's how it works. You have a person with low energy, you have a person with medium energy, and you have a person with high energy. Person one yawns, sucks energy out of the medium, bringing that person down to his level, actually a little bit elevated because now they're both at kind of this level. And then this person yawns and brings everybody back down to like kind of a universal level. It's an octave higher than what happens in your own centers. Okay, if your moving center is low on fuel, then it will draw off of the thinking center. The thinking center will then draw off of the sexual center, and the sexual from the emotional, and emotional from the instinctive. And instead of having moving center down here and all the rest of them kind of staggered like this, it tries to balance you out so that all 5 centers are the same level. In a room, when you yawn, it's balancing out to all the same levels, just like whether it's happening inside your complex or whether it's happening outside your complex. Yeah, if you mix hot and cold water, you get lukewarm water.
Yeah.
Same principle. Exact same principle. It's a physical principle. High goes to low and elevates the low. Hot goes to cold. Dry goes to wet. So again, another example of groundwork.
Yes. Yes.
Start off with physics, can't you? Start off with the laws of thermodynamics. Work your way back down to what the complex does and what yawning and everything else like that is. Or you can start there and come up with the laws of thermodynamics like Newton did. He started inside, great alchemist, Newton. When they had their equivalent of COVID, back in the time of Newton, everyone was shut up and not allowed to interact with one another. He came up with all of this amazing work on the nature of light and optics and prisms and the frequencies and colors and everything else that kind of goes with the whole concept of light, things that had never been seen or done before. Well, kind of. I mean, Pythagoras had it first, but regardless, that didn't survive. So Newton at least rediscovered it. But being tucked away in his own laboratory and not able to get out and explore the physical world very much, you would think he would have to revert to something internal inside of him.
Yeah.
Two roads to the same thing. All right. Someone wrap it up for me.
I have no idea what to say. Why have you bailed me out?
Yeah, when I corner Hannah alone, she has to speak, and then you come up with such brilliant things to say, right? When we've had like meetings with just you and them. Don't be afraid. Don't be shy.
Pretend I'm not here.
Listen, okay, I'm not trying to put anyone on the spot. Okay, it's okay. It's okay. It's really
No,
okay.
it's been a brilliant meeting. There's been a lot in there.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it's good to go over things again. Yeah.
Well, hopefully with a bit of an elevation.
Yeah.
Hopefully. Yeah. I mean, it's curious to me that most people it never occurred to people to groundwork. In other words, try and get to the core of, groundwork is not the core, it's just tools. Groundwork the tools, and then you start to get to the core of something. But elevation is good. Elevate these tools that you have to something else. Soon we'll talk about things like the Alpha Curio Bet. Another thing that I thought was kind of bullshit until I really, really got into it. So I have a different view on it. I also think, let's see. I think it's time for Alpha Curio Gamma.
Yeah, the third level. Yeah.
Alpha Curio Bet, Alpha Curio Beta, Alpha Beta Gamma, Alpha Curio Gamma. Going a bit deeper into it.
Yeah.
The Alpha Curio Bet works about a quarter of the time. Alpha Curio Beta works about half of the time. Let's see if we can get at least 3/4 of the time with Alpha Curio Gamma, but you have to have the connection to it first.
Yeah.
Got to be able to detect the frequency in one way or another of various letters, what they radiate. That takes a toolbox that goes a bit above groundwork, but would be in the same category as it. All right, that was a good wrap up.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you all so much.
Yeah, cheers.
Thank you.
Have a great week, and
Yeah.
we'll see you next Sunday, okay?
Yeah, good.
All right.
Okay.
Very
Okay.
good.